perfect and in less than 1 hour. Wagwan squad, so today we're making sweet potato pudding very fast. This usually takes upwards of 2 hours with prep time, but today I'm going to show you how to cut that time in half while still having a delicious Jamaican dessert. Let's talk about the ingredients. We need 1.5 pounds of sweet potato. This variety is popular in Jamaica, but most varieties of sweet potatoes should be okay. I usually avoid the fibrous or high moisture ones. I keep on seeing recipes online recommending you to avoid the bright orange sweet potato, often found in supermarkets in the States labeled yam, but I've never used it so I don't really know. Calling it yam is a misnomer though, it's still a variety of sweet potato. This is an actual yam. This starchy tuber is indigenous to Central and West Africa and is a staple in Jamaica. I'm going to be using ½ pound of this. Traditionally, Jamaican sweet potato pudding, in addition to the sweet potato, calls for another starchy vegetable, such as yam, dasheen, cocoa, and I've seen recipes with pumpkin. This is optional though, so if you don't have it or want it, just make up the difference with sweet potato. Coconut. This is essential and is usually greater than juice for coconut milk, but we're here to make this quick, so I'm just going to use canned coconut milk. Use one with a short ingredients list because many brands water this down and add thickness and coloring. This is about 2 cups and will make up the bulk of the liquid we end up adding to the pudding. Ginger. Again, this is optional. We only need a little bit, small enough to have an impact but not large enough to where you can identify any ginger taste in the finished product. All the stronger flavored ingredients in a sweet potato pudding should be subtle. I have always hated eating a piece of potato pudding and all I'm tasting is rose water or almond extract. Alright, let's get everything together. I've peeled and washed the sweet potato and yam. They are usually grated so there is some notable texture, but that won't save us any time, so I'm blending everything. What you will notice with sweet potato is that it browns pretty quick. That's just oxidation from having it exposed to air. Grating it would make more of it brown, but that's not a big deal, it's still perfectly fine. This is really starchy, so be careful when peeling because it's a bit hard to get off your hand sometimes, so use your gloves. Here I have the ½ pound of yam. Some varieties of yam also oxidize and turn brown really quick, but this isn't one of them. Either way, it doesn't matter. Usually a bit of grated coconut is added to the potato pudding. It's 50-50 in my experience, with some people not liking or knocking a sweet potato pudding with it, but it doesn't matter either way to me, so I'm adding a bit. I shave the harder outer skin and dice these so they will be blended as well. Ginger. About ½ teaspoon. I didn't want little bits of ginger after blending, so I grated this first. 1 cup of brown sugar. I could have used a bit less because these potatoes are really sweet, but it's hard to tell. About 1.5 tablespoons of cinnamon. Molasses. This adds some depth of flavor to the pudding. That's about 2.5 tablespoons. Nutmeg. This is a key flavor, but I only need about 1 teaspoon. Too much will leave a bitter taste. Two cloves. Again, strong flavors should be barely noticeable, but still have an overall impact on flavor. Hit that with the 2 cups of coconut milk. A teaspoon of almond extract. I'm using a ½ teaspoon measure. And 1.5 teaspoons of rose water. I'm also adding a splash of rum, optional, but I find that it elevates all the flavors. Raisins is usually soaked in this and added to the pudding, but we are trying to make this quick. I'm adding the juice of half of a fresh lime, about 1 tablespoon. This brightens up the flavors. And finally, ½ teaspoon salt. This is essential because it enhances all the flavors, but it should not be noticeable. I'm filming, so a bowl works for me for that purpose, but you could just place all the ingredients in the blender, skip the bowl, save some time. Alright, I didn't blend this too smooth because I still wanted a bit of texture in the pudding. That mouthfeel is part of the experience, but you can get it as smooth as you want. So let's get everything together. I need half cup flour. Throwing the blended mixture a little bit at a time. Lumps are extremely easy to mix out of thick liquids, so that's why I'm adding it like this. I don't think anyone likes lumps of flour in their potato pudding. Speaking of flour, with this recipe, we could omit the flour entirely to make gluten-free potato pudding. The starch in both the yam and the sweet potato is enough to bind everything together. There would be a slight texture difference, but you would end up with a delicious sweet potato pudding. Finally, I'm adding about half cup melted butter. This is unsalted, it adds some extra flavor and smoothness, but we could also skip this and have a vegan potato pudding. I usually taste this so I can adjust flavors if necessary, because once it's baked, that's it. That's perfect though. Let's start baking pans. I'm using this springform pan for easy removal later, but any pan should be good if it's lined and glazed properly. I chose a large enough pan so I will end up with a slightly thinner pudding so it cooks much quicker. Remember, I'm going for really fast. This is non-stick, but I'm still going to grease this up. I'm greasing it generously with salted butter. This is because I want the bottom crust and the edges to have a slightly salty contrast in flavor. Really good. Next, I'm going to dust with a little bit of flour. Shaking it around should do the trick. Alright, that's good. Next, pour in the butter. This smells really good already. Reminds me of when I was young and my mother made potato pudding and I used to lick the spoon with the raw butter. Make sure you get every last bit. Nice. This is going into the oven, which should have already been preheating at 350 degrees Fahrenheit. "15 minutes in and it's set up pretty well already, but it's still kinda raw, especially in the center. This is going back in while I work on that gooey delicious custard on top of authentic Jamaican potato pudding. Grab a frying pan and place it on medium heat. Heat it with 1 cup coconut milk. A splash of vanilla, about 2 tablespoons. 1 cinnamon stick. Powdered cinnamon is harder to work with in thin liquids. A pinch of salt, 1/4 cup sugar, a splash of rum. The custard is going to gel the top of the pudding while it bakes for a delicious finish. I let this simmer for about 5-6 minutes. Next, I'm going to grab the pudding from the oven. Pour over that delicious spice custard. I like to punch this so the custard seeps in a bit. This isn't totally necessary, but it's something I like to do, especially if I have a bit too much custard like I have here. This is going back into the oven for about 6 or so minutes at 400 degrees Fahrenheit. The pudding is mostly cooked and I'm just trying to reduce and caramelize the custard a bit more. Sorry to all the persons out there with trypophobia. Nice. All this was done in about 50 minutes, 15 minutes prep time and about 35 minutes cook time. This method is perfect for getting multiple delicious sweet potato pudding really fast. That caramelized coconut custard on top is super delicious and one of the best parts of potato pudding. A big part of why this is so quick is because it's a bit thinner than sweet potato pudding typically is. Yeah, this will fall apart because it hasn't done setting yet, so I'm going to have to let it cool. I finished the pudding really late in the night, so I placed it in the fridge overnight to finish up the next day. It's really firm now. The custard has an unattractive color because it's cold. Soon fix that. It has a really nice crust at the edges. That's my favorite part. That's a lot thinner than I'm used to, but aside from the thickness, it's pretty much the same. You can spot the little flakes of coconut. Cold pudding is okay, but I really prefer it warmed up. I enjoy it most fresh off the wood fire or straight out of the oven. Nice. That looks so much better. That's beautiful. My only gripe is that nice thick crust on the side isn't on the bottom as well. This smells so good and that custard on top looks great. Alright, time for a taste test. Yeah, the texture is soft but holds together really well, but still has some texture from the coconut. Damn, that crust is so good, it's caramelized and chewy. Yep, may I enjoy this. Alright, sweet potato pudding in 50 minutes. Probably could cut that time down a bit more, but really delicious and much quicker than the standard 2+ hours you might see in a lot of recipes. This was great, and by the way squad, thanks for 20k subs and I will see you in the next one.